The facts are clear. Donald Trump's new authoritarian decree has just been signed. But the central issue is the diplomatic disaster he has ignited. What you are about to witness is an open war against common sense. Former Ambassador Rufus Gifford humiliated Trump on a live broadcast by exposing his attempted blackmail against Denmark. Trump ignored the Constitution in an attempt to buy Greenland, sparking an unprecedented constitutional crisis and a threat to democracy. It is the receipt of his abuse of power. The ambassador demonstrates how Trump's contempt for institutions isolates us from the world. Buckle up, because this video is the ultimate example of this government's lack of accountability. See for yourself how he is humiliated by his own diplomatic incompetence.
Well, I think the first thing on it that I'd love to see is to stop the saber rattling, stop the military threats, start treating one of our best allies in the world with the respect that they've earned and they deserve. But ultimately, I am not optimistic because, as you mentioned, I'm always in favor of diplomacy. I love sitting across the table from folks and working at our differences. But in many ways, I think that the president undermined the diplomacy of the meeting with his tweet early this morning. So it's hard to see very much coming productively coming out of the meeting this afternoon from where I sit.
The tweet this morning, there's been multiple comments over the last several days, too, when he's saying we'll have Greenland one way or another. You've been having conversations with lawmakers about this issue, right? What are they telling you behind closed doors? Do they feel it's too late to convince the president to back off? Are they going to assert themselves?
Well, I think that they are, and you're seeing a couple of bills pop up, and I have been talking to lawmakers. Not only is there going to be a bill on the floor, I believe the House today, there's a congressional delegation heading to Copenhagen tomorrow to work on these issues, as I hope Congress claws back some of their Article 1 powers here. So yes, let's do that. Remember that any action this size and this scale has to and should go through Congress. And so I'm hoping that a bipartisan group of lawmakers continues to do their job here, and they seem to be.
All this.
I'd love to say, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Forgive me. I got eager to ask you about one of the developments this morning. Please continue.
No, I was just going to say, look, the thing about those numbers that your correspondent just went through, and they are extraordinary. We do need to take Arctic security more seriously. I do think us, as the United States as well as NATO, have taken their eye off the ball as it relates to Arctic security. But we can't do all of that without having to blow up one of the best alliances that the modern world has ever seen, and that is NATO. Greenland is not for sale, which means you cannot buy it. And thus, yes, sit down from the Danes and the Greenlanders, talk about increased national security investment in Greenland, think about rare earth mining in Greenland. The Danes and the Greenlanders would welcome that, but take this saber rattling off the table.
We did see Denmark send military equipment to Greenland just this morning, bolstering troop presence in the region. What does that tell you? Because currently it seems like everything is escalating. How do you de-escalate?
Well, I really think this has to come from our side, Anna. The truth of the matter is the threats have been one way here. The threats have been coming out of the mouths of the president and his administration. And I think and we have great diplomats. Look, Marco Rubio used to know better as it relates to these issues. I think that starting today, if they wanted to take back control a little bit of this narrative and work together with some of our best alliances, they have the ability to do that. But it is going to be the American leadership that is going to have to do it, in my mind. But I hope members of Congress also, as I said, assert their authority here.
Don't go anywhere, because what the video didn't show, and what I am going to reveal now, is even darker for the future of our republic. Former Ambassador Rufus Gifford's testimony is the autopsy of a diplomacy killed by Donald Trump's authoritarian vanity. What we are witnessing is not a breach of etiquette, but an open war against the security architecture that has prevented global conflict since 1945. When Trump uses Twitter to implode negotiations before even sitting at the table, he is sending a clear message. Career institutions, the State Department, and intelligence experts are irrelevant in the face of his autocratic impulses. This stance not only diminishes us, but isolates us at a time when the Arctic is becoming the new epicenter of territorial disputes with Russia and China. The attempt to buy Greenland through budgetary blackmail and veiled threats of withdrawing military support is the pinnacle of disrespect for our allies' sovereignty. For the progressive public, the warning is clear. If Trump treats Denmark, a fundamental NATO partner, with this level of institutional contempt, there are no limits to what he will do against the internal safeguards of our democracy. Ambassador Gifford was surgical in pointing out that the president deliberately undermines diplomacy. The goal is not the territory itself, but a demonstration that he can bend the will of any nation through brute force and financial bullying. It is a threat to democracy that overflows our borders and contaminates international law. Exploring the transcript, we see that resistance began to form where Trump least expected it, in the legislative branch. Gifford mentions that Congress is trying to reclaim its Article I powers. This is a crucial technical point of constitutional law that the public needs to understand. Article I of the United States Constitution grants Congress, not the President, the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and control national finances. By attempting to carry out territorial transactions by decree, Trump ignores the checks and balances, plunging the country into a constitutional crisis. Reports from outlets like the New York Times confirm there was a silent panic in the halls of power, with lawmakers from both parties fearing that Trump's recklessness would result in a permanent rupture with NATO. The dismantling of norms is a slow and silent process until it becomes irreversible. Gifford's analysis of Arctic security versus saber-rattling exemplifies the difference between state policy and the politics of spectacle. Trump prefers the spectacle, even if the cost is our credibility. The blackmail of conditioning. American friendship on the sale of natural resources is behavior we associate with dictatorial regimes, not the leadership of the free world. The social impact of this is the normalization of the absurd. When the public becomes accustomed to seeing a president threaten an ally over a frustrated real estate purchase, the ground is prepared for even more serious attacks against the domestic judicial and electoral systems. The ethical vigilance this moment demands of us is absolute. The ambassador's words reveal that the president actively sabotaged the White House meeting with aggressive statements on social media. This is not just a lack of professionalism. It is a destabilization tactic. Trump thrives in chaos because, in the vacuum of order, his personal will becomes the only law. Accountability is the only vaccine against this authoritarian virus. We must demand that Congress exercise its fiscal and oversight authority to prevent the defense budget from being turned into a tool for personal extortion. The fact that Denmark sent military reinforcements to Greenland in response to Washington's rhetoric is an indelible stain on our diplomatic history. Factual analysis does not lie. NATO is under internal attack. Gifford is emphatic in saying that the alliance is not for sale. This phrase should echo in the ears of every voter who cares about social justice and world peace. Without the cohesion of liberal democracies, the space is filled by expansionist autocracy. Trump, by flirting with this aggressive isolationism, serves the interests of democracy's adversaries. What the video shows us is the embarrassment of a career professional facing the destruction of decades of work in a single tweet. It is the receipt of a mentality that does not recognize the value of partnership, only the value of submission. The extent of this crisis reaches the heart of our republic. If we allow the executive to govern by whim, the concept of equality before the law ceases to exist. The open war against transparency institutions aims to hide the fact that Trump's foreign policy is based on interests that are not those of the American people. The manipulation of public opinion through fear and aggression is a classic tool of regimes seeking to erode freedom. Rufus Gifford, by maintaining ethical firmness in his interview, shows us that institutional resistance is still breathing, but it depends on an informed and vigilant electorate. The future of our individual liberties is intrinsically linked to how we treat the world. A presidency that feels entitled to treat a sovereign country as a commodity is the same one that will try to treat the citizens' vote as optional. The connection between external authoritarianism and internal authoritarianism is absolute. The disrespect for international norms described by Gifford is a mirror of the disrespect for constitutional norms seen on January 6th. We are in a moment of moral urgency. The analysis of the transcript leaves no doubt. Trump is the greatest threat to democratic stability this country has ever faced. For the democratic public, the message is one of unity and firmness. We cannot allow ourselves to be distracted by social media noise and lose sight of the technical dismantling occurring behind the scenes. The attempt to buy Greenland was ridiculed by many as a joke, but as Gifford demonstrated, it was a real national security crisis that nearly imploded NATO. The use of force and intimidation as substitutes for diplomacy is the fastest path to tyranny. The protection of our Constitution begins with the systematic denunciation of every abuse of power, no matter how bizarre or folksy it may seem at first glance. At the end of this analysis, it is clear that the fight for justice and democracy is a daily task. The former ambassador has given us the diagnosis. The cure depends on our ability to demand accountability and to punish at the ballot box those who treat our republic as their private property. Trump's contempt for institutions is his greatest legacy, and it is up to us to ensure that this legacy is one of failure, not permanent destruction. The situation is grave, the threat is real, and history is watching us. What Rufus Gifford's video teaches us is that truth still has defenders, but those defenders need the support of a population that will not remain silent in the face of arbitrariness. The open war for the soul of America is being fought now, and every act of resistance counts. The preservation of the rule of law depends on our courage to face authoritarian blackmail with the strength of the law and popular mobilization.